Osama bin Laden, Adolf Hitler. These gentlemen are hated for their extracurriculars. You know, things like genocide, terrorism, and all that other fun stuff. But what if I told you that the Bible had someone just like them, but instead of being hated, he's revered by a whole religion? That's right, boys and girls. Today we're talking about Joshua, the first crusader. Joshua started out as a student of Moses, right after Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt. He was first a spy, and not just any ordinary one either. Joshua was easily the bravest and most ballsy spy Israel had. You see, the Israelites didn't have any land after they left Egypt, so they had to settle in the wilderness. God promised to give them a home from a place called Canaan, which the Israelites to call the Promised Land, and despite it being promised, they still had to work to get it. So that's how Joshua got his start up as a spy. Moses sent him and 11 other guys into Canaan to spy on their future war zones, and when they got there, they saw nutty stuff like giants and insanely fortified cities, and basically shit themselves when reporting back to Moses. But Joshua, he was one of the only 2 other spies who saw all of that and somehow still thought invading would not be a problem at all. Around this time, Joshua also commanded a militia that protected Israelites against other nations while they were still stuck in the wilderness. He even saw Moses getting the 10 commandments. Honestly, this guy already had a stacked resume, but even though all of this sounds cool and impressive, Joshua would still do way more. You see, up until now, Joshua was just a background character with some impressive feats. But then Moses died and left him in charge. And to be fair to Moses, God himself literally said Joshua had the spirit of leadership in him. So he was probably going to be a good leader. Maybe a little too good. You see, now that Moses was gone, there was nobody to stop Joshua. He was completely sick of living in the wilderness, and more than anything else, he wanted to make sure his people got their promised land. To achieve this goal, Joshua officially became the first crusader and launched his jihad on Canaan. Joshua just had a knack for war. Off the top of my head, only David conquered more than Joshua, and even then Joshua did it from scratch. Unlike David, he started out in the wilderness with 0 land and no stronghold, but he was still able to get enough land to hold 12 different tribes. In all, Joshua conquered 31 cities in Canaan, and he had some very cool moments, like one in Jericho. Jericho was one of those cities with the huge walls and fortifications, so obviously this would be a big problem for a small and under-equipped army like Joshua and the Israelites. Unfortunately for Jericho, Israel had something called the Ark of Covenant. This ark was a golden super weapon that apparently had the essence of God in it, so it could do basically anything. All Joshua had to do was march around Jericho with the ark a couple times, and then all the fortifications and walls came down. Then they waltzed in and killed everyone. Joshua even cursed anyone who attempted to rebuild Jericho to top it off. There was also one time he overkilled a city called Ai. Ai wasn't a huge city, so his scouts said he only needed about 3,000 men max to capture it. But instead, Joshua decided to take 10 times that amount, bring in 30,000 men instead. So at this point, he already outnumbered his enemies by the tens. But rather than just crushing them with brute force, he chose the most effective way to genocide them all. See, Joshua split his men in 2. The first group would be a decoy led by Joshua himself, and the other was a main assault group. Joshua and the first group attacked Ai and then faked a retreat when the city soldiers chased them. Just behind all of this though, the main assault group was lying in wait till the city was completely defenseless. Then they jumped in immediately and started an insane slaughter, killing everyone they found breathing in there, and then they burned the city down when they were done. At this point, the soldiers of Ai already heard the screaming from their homes and could see the burning smoke rising from their city, so they were obviously getting kinda nervous already. But this was exactly what Joshua wanted. And because the mind games weren't enough, Joshua, while turning back to attack this group, which let me remind you, already outnumbered these guys by the way, still got the main assault group to join him from behind for history's first double penetration. Obviously, being sandwiched by opponents 10 times your size while having to think about how your kids back home were basically barbecued basically meant the soldiers were finished, and sure enough, that day everyone in Ai died. Literally the only foreign tribe to survive being genocided by Joshua was the Gibeonites, and they only managed this because they tricked the Israelites into thinking they weren't from Canaan. They sent people to Israel in worn out clothes and pretended to be foreigners who just wanted to worship the God of Israel. Joshua of course took the bait and he signed a treaty with them. In the end, Joshua still chose to honor this treaty even after finding out he lied, which shows just how much of an honorable guy he is. So now we already know about Joshua's God-loving crusades, we need to talk about his habits. So you know all those battles and genocides, well Joshua has a pretty unique way of ending them. After each battle, when all the killing and burning is done, Joshua usually kills the kings of these cities and then specifically finds the tallest trees just to lynch their corpses and leave them there to sunbathe. I guess now we know where the KKK got their drip from. At first, I thought this was just a sweet little terror tactic, you know, just to send a message to everybody else, but no, he did this to almost every king he fought. The Amorites, Jericho, even one time he faced a coalition of multiple kingdoms. He did it to each of those kings. So it's pretty obvious he just likes hanging and stuff, because you'd think the others would have just got the message already. Speaking of coalitions, just to show you how insanely talented and scary Joshua was as a military guy, he faced 2 different coalitions from the north and southern regions of Canaan. The first was the Southern Alliance, made up of like 5 cities from southern part of Canaan. These guys teamed up after they heard of the treaty Gibeon made with Israel, and so they attacked Gibeon. Joshua and the Israelites had to intervene though because of the treaty, and it did not end well for any of those cities or their kings. Like I said earlier, Joshua found each of those 5 kings and lynched them all. The Northern Alliance was also put together by a guy named Jabin, who told the other members that they would end up like the South if they didn't do something about Joshua and the Israelites quick. They all teamed up and had a bunch of chariots and had so many men that they were literally compared to sand. But again, this didn't matter. Joshua still won. Eventually he got to the giants too, called the Anakites. They killed them and many other people until finally they had their promised land. Even though Joshua couldn't kill everybody and there were still Gentile scum around them, he had finally still given his people their Israel. Joshua 12 is a whole chapter listing the kings he defeated and the land he got. In total, he killed 31 kings. Joshua died telling his people to believe in God and not to associate with their neighbors. And for such a war-loving guy, he died peacefully in the promised land after creating a home for his people. Sure, others might have died for this dream, but they did not serve his God, and they were also not his people. In the end, all that mattered was that they finally fulfilled some of God's plan, and now he got to die in the promised land. Not even Moses had that.